Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, within Warzone this year, when it comes to your loadouts, you got a couple of different options for wildcards. You can run something more standard like Overkill. That way you get a primary and a secondary. I've seen a lot of people enjoy using some of the brand new wildcards that Black Ops 6 introduced, but there's also Gunfighter. And that's what I want to focus on here today, because with Gunfighter, having the ability to get 8 attachments on your weapon instead of just the normal 5 pretty much turns any already competitive or potential meta weapon into just a flat out overpowered beast. And today I want to break down 5 of the best gunfighter loadouts that you can use right now. So starting first here, we've got one of my favorite weapons in the game, the GPR-91, and this thing is already fantastic as a rifle just outright, even with 5 attachments. You go through, you add 8 to this thing, it is utterly insane. I do want to briefly mention the remainder of the loadout here. You can kind of copy and paste this with every single primary here today, but obviously with Gunfighter, you're stuck with just a default secondary, which ends up being a pistol, or in this case, a special. I like the Sierra 9mm a little bit more than just a standard pistol here. It's got a tad bit more range and roughly the same TTK as anything you're going to get out of the base 4 pistols there. So on that, I use iron sight, suppressor, long barrel, vertical foregrip, and the first overall extended mag there. Then I go for smokes, knives, survivor, sprinter, gung ho on there to close things out. And like I said, that's pretty much the same on every single gunfighter build. Obviously, our main focus is the 8 attachment primary, and the GPR, as I mentioned, goes crazy. So for the optic here, it's really a matter of preference. If you guys have caught the loadout videos that we've covered already so far this year, you know I'm a huge fan of the Jason Armory 2 times and the Willis 3 times. For any mid to long range gun, typically I'm cycling between one of those. There's not really a method to the madness on which one I choose. It's mostly just whatever I feel when I first initially set it up, right? I also go for the base suppressor in this case, the GPR being relatively easy to use. You don't necessarily need a compensator, and obviously staying off the radar is always a win there. Reinforced barrel I think is phenomenal here, getting a little bit of damage range and a little bit of velocity, so extends that out quite a bit. We're up to a 51 meter effective damage range and a 936 velocity, which is going to work great on pretty much any kind of engagement, big map or resurgence there. Vertical foregrip will give me the max control here. Ranger foregrip is also a really good choice. It's going to give you a little bit less horizontal control, but you get some sprinting movement speed. So if you want to opt for an even more aggressive build and you find the weapon easy already, go for the Ranger. That's never a bad choice either. Extended 2 here, obviously very straightforward, your basic 60 rounder. Ergonomic rear grip, not super necessary on a build like this that's primarily meant for the mid to long range, but it adds in some nice versatility. The faster ADS is always great, and a better slide to fire speed is super convenient if you're always sliding in your gunfights, right? I also really like the balance stock here too. It's just more aggressive overall. You're getting better movement, better default strafe speed, and then better ADS speed as well. So just makes it more aggressive, more versatile there. And then recoil springs. Why not be as accurate as possible? If you already are comfortable with how this gun feels though, you could even upgrade to overpressure and get an even better velocity stat, and that's always a good thing to have here too, so you really can't go wrong with either of those. But the GPR, one of the more versatile weapons in the game with 8 attachments, just feels utterly unstoppable. Now the XM4, obviously a weapon that we've talked about a bunch, also benefits a ton from having 8 attachments on here. I mean, you can see this thing does not move. I mean, it's already easy to use and it's straightforward with 5 attachments, and it's a great gun with 5 attachments. You put 8 on here, very few things are going to be able to compete with this thing over really any range whatsoever. I love the feel of this thing with 8 attachments on it. So yet again, Jason Armory 2 times for me, but if there's a different scope or optic you want to use more that you're more comfortable with, always rock that instead. Basic suppressor, yet again, gonna keep me off the radar there. Long barrel in this case just helps out with some damage range, so it's even more lethal, even more effective there. We end up with essentially a 55 meter effective damage range, which is fantastic, of course. I also go for the vertical foregrip here in this case as well, just max horizontal control, gonna make the weapon easier to use. Once more, Ranger foregrip, always great, just for making it a little bit more aggressive if you wanted to. Extended 2 in this case works fine for me. It's going to be 60. That is going to be just fine for any squad size, right? You could go up to 100. I think that's a little overkill, and I don't like the slowdowns it offers with the weapons, so I just stick with 60 because that's never going to fail you, right? Ergonomic rear grip here, yet again, once more, not super necessary, but convenient for what it is. Buffer weight stock, probably the most important part of this setup because it essentially removes all recoil control. You stack this with the vertical underbarrel there, and it just doesn't move. You're going to be laser accurate. There is not a weapon in the game that'll be easier to use than this setup right here. Then lastly, I do go for overpressure. This sort of balances out with using the long barrel on there, so I get better range, the max range boost, and then also a really good velocity boost as well here, so we're up to a 960 for that. So this thing is fantastic. Whether you're fighting at 30, 40, 50 meters or even 70, 80, 90 meters, it's gonna laser beam, it's gonna melt players. ton of fun. By the way, as we are going through all the weapons and setups here today, if you enjoy the video, if you find the information helpful, a like rating is seriously appreciated. It does really help grow the channel, and share the video around to new viewers. And if you happen to be one of those new viewers, or maybe you just have not subscribed yet, we should change that. This is your one-stop shop every single day for everything going on in COD, whether it's meta breakdowns like this, the latest news and updates, it's all right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications. Every single day we are getting closer and closer to hitting 1 million subscribers. Next up, another personal favorite of mine, the KSV. This thing is an extremely versatile SMG. Really good for sniper support because it's got a great mid-range TTK, but it's also very aggressive for the close range as well, especially when you go through and you put on 8 attachments on this thing, right? So here, although I do like the iron sights a decent bit, once you do get into that mid-range and whatnot, I think an optic's gonna help out a ton for accuracy purposes. So I go for the Kepler Microflex. It's just your basic red dot, as you saw there. The suppressor here is great, keeping you off the radar. If you wanted even more control, you could always opt for something like the compensator, but that suppression there is obviously very important as well if you care about being a bit more stealthy. I like the long barrel in this case. Maximize that damage range. Why not? You have other attachments to help out with velocity and things if you need that, but maxing out that damage range to 18 meters is phenomenal for an SMG. Really helps with that versatility factor. Ranger foregrip, better control, better movement as well, so you're aggressive and it makes it more accurate. That's a win-win. Extended 2 here is going to be a 50 rounder. That works fine for this fire rate. You know, 60 would obviously be a little bit more safe, but 50 will work fine for most players there. Ergonomic rear grip actually serves a lot more of a purpose here as opposed to on the rifles, because we are up close and personal, so the better ADS is crucial. The slide to fire is crucial. You definitely notice that on a setup and on a weapon like this. Balance stock here as well for the better movement across the board. Just makes the weapon overall more aggressive. Then I kind of go back and forth between recoil springs and overpressured. With overpressured on here, you've got a 637 velocity. That's going to be really good for an SMG, especially in the fights you want to take with this thing. But obviously, accuracy is important too. So if you feel you could be more accurate with this gun, you don't like it, you're missing a couple of shots, switch out this for recoil springs. You'll be good to go there. Or you could try out using a compensator, as I mentioned earlier. Either way, the KSV feels really good right now. I think the Kompakt is another choice that just absolutely shreds. Now this one is a little bit more geared towards just the close range. You know, preferably you're fighting 15 meters and in. Roughly like this first dummy is going to be where you're going to be the most efficient, right? When you do get out to 25 meters, for instance, the damage just drop off there regardless of if you have 1 attachment or 8 attachments on it. That's just how the TTK works. But up close, this thing rips. It's one of the fastest TTKs in the entire game, and 8 attachments on it just means you are as aggressive and accurate as possible. So I actually really like the irons here, but I don't feel the need for a laser on a setup like this, so I do go for an optic. But if you just wanted to use 7 attachments here instead of 8 and keep the iron sights, that'd be totally fine. That's simply a matter of preference here, right? But I like the Kepler Microflex yet again. Compensator in this case is a bit more important to me than the suppressor, just because with this fire rate, your ammo matters. You want to be as accurate as possible, and so as you're burning through those shots, because this fast RPM, the compensator is just going to make sure you're more accurate, right? I think that's a huge win for a setup like this. Long barrel does extend out that most lethal damage range in the game to about 12.5 meters. That's decent for an SMG, but that's sort of the balance of this thing. It doesn't have crazy good range because that first damage range has a just absurd TTK. Ranger foregrip, mobility, and control. Win-win yet again. Extended 3 here is only 60, and with this fire rate, you need it. So I'm absolutely running that, of course. Ergonomic rear grip here as well for the better mobility across the board. Balance stock also feels phenomenal here for its mobility benefits. Then I go for recoil springs over something like overpressured. We're not fighting at distances where overpressured is going to be super necessary with how this TTK functions. So accuracy over everything here is what I'm really going to be the most focused on. But yeah, the Kompakt feels phenomenal with 8 attachments. It feels even better. This is one of my personal favorite guns in the game at the moment. And then lastly here we've got the C9. This is going to behave a lot like the KSV in a lot of situations. Obviously it's going to be the most efficient, like 15-20 meters and closer. That's where it's going to have the fastest TTK, and you should really gear a lot of your gunfights with this thing. But it's got a decent range stat as well, so if you're fighting at 25 meters, it's not the end of the world. And obviously having 8 attachments gives you a decent safety net for performance overall, right? Again, this is a situation where I really like the iron sight, so I don't feel like you would need a Kepler Microflex. If you like the default irons more than like a red dot or something, you can drop that. Unfortunately, you're not using 8 attachments, but even with 7, this thing's gonna be just fine. Basic suppressor here. This gun's relatively easy to use, so you don't have to worry about a compensator too much in this case, but if you really wanted to, you could always switch over to that. Long barrel, yet again, I want to maximize that damage range. In this case, we're up to almost a 16 meter effective damage range, which is pretty solid there. Ranger foregrip, mobility, and control yet again. Extended 2 in this case will be a 50. That works okay for this fire rate. It's not going to be the end of the world. You know, burning through ammo, you're always going to have to reload, and it's a decent safety net. So right in that sort of middle ground there. Ergonomic rear grip, yet again. I know, crazy surprise, right? I also go for the balanced stock in this case too. The mobility benefits of these two combined are just so rewarding on SMGs. And then again, I do value accuracy a lot here. I mean, overpressured, again, like I said earlier, is never a bad choice, especially if you're comfortable with the weapon, but that accuracy that Recoil Springs offers on top of all these other stuff, like the Ranger foregrip, it's just really, really valuable if you want to make sure you're getting the most accurate weapon possible. So another really fun build here. For what it's worth, like, lasers could be decent if you wanted to have something that help out with like your hip fire spread. If you are hip firing and transitioning into an ADS, you could use something like that. You know, you could use hip fire to ADS accuracy if you really wanted to, but overall, I don't think it's super necessary. Even with 7 attachments, this thing's going to be just fine. Trust me on that. But that said, that's going to wrap things up for this one. Those are 5 of the best gunfighter setups that ultimately make these weapons borderline overpowered, I would say. Like, they're pretty broken when you throw on all these attachments and you just have every single stat category maxed out essentially. But if you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated, helps grow the channel a lot. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out so you can always guarantee you're in the know for all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.